Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. In this season, I'm going to be speaking to academy managers from the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and some Scottish clubs. As an academy parent myself, I want to bring some insight into how these academies are being run. I find that it's easy to approach coaches. I hear from players, ex-players, and parents on many platforms about their experiences in academies. But I do not hear from academy managers. This is why I want to do this season. If you think first team managers have playing staff of 18 to 25, whereas academy managers have a playing staff of over 100. That could be from the under 9s to the under 18s. These are people who are so powerful, but they just seem like these men in grey suits or women in grey suits that you just never get to hear from. So what I want to do is I want to bring to you, the listener, what they think, what they want to sign, and what they are looking for in these academies. So if you like this episode, don't just watch and keep it to yourself. Subscribe to see more and spread the word. Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. On today's episode, we have the head of academy recruitment at Middlesbrough Football Club, Mr. Martin Carter. Thanks for coming on, Martin.
No worries. I appreciate the invite.
Pleasure to have you here, mate. I appreciate you coming on. So normally I start by getting a background check, and then we work our way to where we are today so everyone gets to know you. So without further ado, have you played for a professional academy or school of excellence before? If so,
Yeah.
What club and what position?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I'm 5'7.5". I played centre back when I was 12, but I was 5'7.5" at 12. Yeah, and I was at Middlesbrough. So I was at Middlesbrough from under 12s to under 16s as a schoolboy, centre of excellence schoolboy, and then went to Hartlepool as a youth player. I was a really early developer in terms of physical maturation, as that's why I probably went in as a centre-back. All of a sudden, everybody else obviously looked the part as a centre-back. Then they thought, well, let's try and move him to a midfield player.
Was you scouted?
Yeah, so to be honest, just reiterating on that, you look back all those years ago, my performances overnight just suddenly went boom. And I had a great couple of years, believe me. So I'd gone from being average to okay at primary school, willing, not always able. And then overnight, comprehensive school, all of a sudden everybody thinks, wow, he hasn't if improved. He's outstanding. But what you find is it's probably puberty early, maturation early. And rather than your talent and your long-term ability, it's more your current performance aligns with how stronger and quicker you are in layman's terms at that moment in time. And from 12 to 13, all of a sudden overnight, bang, I've changed into a man and I'm able to run over the top of everybody else, quicker than everybody else. And everybody all of a sudden now thinks I'm the best player, which is great.
And do you think so as well?
I did as well. Yeah.
So it's very interesting, like in terms of that. So what happens mentally when others catch up?
Well, I always look at this now. I remember at the time thinking, what have I done wrong? There must be something that I've done wrong. But I look back and probably think that everybody blows that much smoke up your backside, if you like, at the time, because your performances are really game-dominating and match-winning performances, if you like. And all of a sudden, when you stop having that same effect, people say, oh, he's finished, he's done, or his direction's gone into something else, where at that same time, you know what it's like, 13s, 14s, 15s, other things come into the eye line. And unfortunately, I saw all of it. And that's why all of a sudden you're at that stage when you hit that real high early performance, you also hit the the fruits that go with it. It's popularity, everything that comes with it because of your performances. But it's very short lived. It's a really good spot when you have it.
So going on distractions, since you want to go there, like what was that like? Did you keep your head?
I'm from like a real local pit village, and we're quite cocooned really. So obviously I was playing for the local village team, and you're playing against the town teams who where there's one of me in the village, there's 5 or 6 in the towns because more population, etc., etc. So at the time, everybody in the village thinks, oh, he's going to be a footballer. And you convince yourself that that's true. So what happens is you actually come away from what got you there in the first place, and you think, well, it's really easy, it's really simplistic, and your performances don't have to really align with your dedication and your additional training and everything else, because it's really easy, just because obviously you're probably 2 stone physically, muscle mass and developed than everybody else. And then you look back now, it's probably like an academy under 9-year-old playing against an under 12. No wonder why it'd be easy, because when you look back, that's what it looked like.
Yeah. So do you remember the moment in a game or something where you're just like, my gosh, hold on, something's changed there?
Absolutely. I can remember the before and the after. So I remember it would have been just probably going into comprehensive school, which is probably the start of everybody's growth and maturity scale, right at the bottom of it. So from under 12, I remember finishing that first year at school, and I remember it was sports day. I remember all of a sudden doing sports day and being competitive, when prior to that, I never was. I was always keen and enthusiastic, but never really had those wins, if you like. So, yeah, sports day was overnight. I finished maybe second. And then all that summer, playing out with your mates and in farmers' fields and doing the things that kids do, which we don't allow ours to do now. Climbing trees and just doing general boys things. And then starting pre-season back with my local grassroots team. We used to do 14, 15 laps before you got the ball out. And I used to do probably more because I was probably not behaving myself or talking or messing around. So I had to do even more. And I remember we used to do the sprints, and all of a sudden the people the couple of years prior who used to be ahead of me were actually in my wake. And I'm thinking, actually, I'm not even trying here. Not realizing that my aerobic capacity's starting to grow, my muscle definition starting to develop, and everything else is aligning with my performances on the running side of it and the physical combat side of it. And I'm just thinking, wow, this is me. I've improved. And I haven't done anything. I've just improved. So it was great. So for the next 13s, 14s, probably a good two year, the attention and the scouts and everything was like, it just changed overnight, my mindset. And because prior to all that, I was so dedicated, so enthusiastic, just so energized around football, because it come easier. I probably loosened off on the dedication, loosened off on the doing the extras, and just went with it. And everything else went with it as well, unfortunately.
Do you remember the game that it went with it? Like, was there a moment in the game where you got tackled or you couldn't keep up, where you thought, hold on?
So I remember probably from under 13s, under 14s, I was the most dominant player within the top 3, 4 in the Northeast. And then when I always used to play against players who was at the similar sort of level in terms of academy, centre of excellence back then, I was always able to physically dominate. Now, I always remember it was a school game and I'd just come back from holiday. I remember it clearly. It was 1995. My mum had just been married,
Right.
and I'd just come back from holiday and I'd been away for 2 weeks in Salute. And we come back and played in the school game. And the school was so easy for the last prior 2 years. And I remember playing against, it was Newton Aycliffe or Woodham School. And there was a guy I used to play against, obviously prior, and I used to totally dominate him. And that day, I thought, oh, I must have had a good 2 weeks on holiday. and I was only 15, and I
Wow.
probably did have a good 2 weeks on holiday.
Yeah.
However, something clicked where I'm thinking, I've got to work that little bit harder now. I've got to make them quicker decisions, and I've got to get a bit of a reality check here. But I didn't. I just thought, oh, it's a one-off game. I'm better than him, and I'm better at this level, and it'll come back next week. But it didn't. Things started getting really tough that year at 15, and I wondered what I've actually done wrong. And prior to that, not having to be as dedicated, not have to do the additional stuff, not having to do that, I thought, am I going to have to try and do that again? But ultimately, I was fully maturated, fully developed, physically fully formed, probably 13, 14. And then others started to catch up and grow and develop. They were always the chasing pack. So they always had to be always willing, but not as able against myself. When they become almost able, they then had that chasing pack mentality against me, and they were more resilient, etc. And I all of a sudden thought, what's going on, really? And it set me up superb, obviously, as I progressed into scouting and having a more understanding of what it looks like.
So what was that transition from, you said, the coaches were everyone was blowing smoke. How did you feel when it changes? When all of a sudden it's like, Martin, what you doing? Or did you get that from the coaches?
I just thought, he's got something against me. It's jealousy. He wants his own boy to play ahead of me because 2 years ago, I'm miles better than him. That's what kids think. But ultimately, looking back now, actually all those things as a young boy thinking, you in your head thought they were right. But actually looking back, he's probably, the coaches, etc., probably looking, well, he ain't putting the time in, he ain't putting the dedication in, and actually things aren't as easy as what they once were, without understanding the reasons why they weren't easy, but just actually on the eye line, probably thinking, well, he actually's not putting the time in, end of. And I can understand looking back now.
What was mum and dad saying in the car?
So the direction that I had at the time was difficult because dad wasn't really on the scene. Mom was like, did her best, but was a case of no matter what I did when I come in, I would always tell them if I played well, I was the best player. If I didn't play well, it was everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
And she would say, oh, it's all right, son, sit down and make your tea and everything's great. But my big mentor, if you like, and my best mate, I'd love to have an argument with him again now about football, was my granddad. And he was with me everywhere I went, everywhere. And he never used to say a great deal. He just would nod his head if everything was good. And if everything was bad, he just used to say, how did I do? But I was always a slave to praise because I had so much praise for 2 years. Then afterwards, it wasn't as highlighted. Then I would ask, how did I do? Did you see that I did? And it was crying out for that prior praise.
So here comes the day you go in to the office, the decision has been made that you're no longer required. How does Martin take that? How does that day look?
Believe it or not, back then it was very, very different than what it looks like
I
now.
know how it was, trust me.
So believe me, I'm thinking I'm starting pre-season. I don't even get a call to say that I'm coming back or not. So I say to my mom, thinking that previous couple of years I was always a dominant figure in the group. And then I remember the year it was, and I said, oh, well, we haven't had a letter to say when we're starting back. And so I said to my mom, oh, can you give them a call and see when I'm starting back? And the answer was, oh, we've brought in an additional players, youth international players, and he's not required.
Wow.
And that was it. There was no, I don't think if we'd have contacted
you wouldn't have gotten called to now.
Wouldn't have even known how it turned up. So, and listen, I look back and I think, I don't think that's wrong because at the time that was the norm. Now it's obviously far, far different, and there's a lot of departments and there's a lot of support that can surround the boy and help direct into the right avenues. Where at the time I thought, wow, it was actually a real difficult time. But it was a real good, solid reminder that life's tough and you've got to get over things pretty quickly and move forward.
So yeah, trust me. I remember one time when I was younger, I was 15 or 16. I won't say who he is. He's a well-known character. I got called into the first team manager's office at Leyton Orient. And just put it this way, that was a very eye-opening moment, what I got told. So definitely I understand it wasn't PC as it is now. So where did it lead to from there? You said you went, where did you play again after that?
Well, at the time, I was at Middlesbrough, and prior to me signing for Middlesbrough, because I was such a dominant figure on the grassroots scene, there was lots of clubs that showed interest, and all higher level than what Middlesbrough at the time. There was Manchester United, there was lots of bigger clubs, but also at the time I had a bigger ego. And then when the time came that Middlesbrough wasn't going to be a fit for me, which it was right, by the way, on their decision, all those other clubs previously that I thought would have been interested all of a sudden probably recognised the same reason as what Middlesbrough did. So I remember travelling down to play for Scunthorpe. And I remember we went into a little white shed it was, and it was just outside of Glanford Park, I believe. And I remember everybody come out crying because they didn't get a white yes, which once was. I come out crying because they wanted to offer me one. I didn't feel at that time that I could probably leave home because of how close I was with my grandparents. And on the way back, I remember speaking with my stepdad and saying, "You better ring Hartlepool up." I said, "I'm not sure I can move down to go to Scunthorpe." Previously, I'd already knocked Hartlepool back because my own ego thought, well, I've come from Middlesbrough, I'm too good for this. And 2 years ago, I would have been.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was probably where I currently was at that stage. But even moving further forward, you quickly get some reality checks when you're faltering and probably slowly on the decline, and everybody else is striving to get to where you once were. So my stepdad rang Hartlepool up. Yeah, absolutely, we'll take him in. I was still at a stage where I probably still was ahead in terms of performances of that level. And obviously they said, yeah, absolutely, we'll take him in. And yeah, just reiterating, probably a similar process as when you blink and look back and remember it. Actually, at that time, they've probably thought, well, do you know what? We're at a stage now where we could probably use these performances currently, but we probably don't see him long term. But that's not reiterated to you at the time. You think you signed because you're the best performer. And I was. But did I have the best potential? Probably not. But no one actually thinks of that back then. They just think what wins your matches and what gets you success and praise around the club at the time. And I suppose I did help them win matches and get success and praise around the club at the time. But believe me, that was short-lived too. So again, it was a very short stint. And once again, in my mind, I'm the best player. They want to play their own. They want to do this. Looking back, very immature, very narrow-minded. I can't believe that I'm not in and around the first team squad. And that was at 17. And I'm thinking, it's ludicrous. I'm the best player. Obviously, I wasn't. And obviously, I didn't have that potential to be the best player neither. But again, I look back and that's how kids think. And if you could put an old head on young shoulders, you would have a more of an understanding of where you went wrong.
When does reality kick in?
I think reality very much kicks in when all of a sudden where you come away from Middlesbrough, then you come away from Hartlepool, and then you've got to go back to the grassroots scene where you once were the striver 4 or 5 years earlier, and you're not necessarily the striver anymore, and you've got to think, well, actually, there's something that you're going to have to quickly rectify. All those egotistical fruits that you once were given and praise and everything else quickly stop. But what I will say is that I've always had good resilience, whether it was intrinsic or extrinsic, probably extrinsic. So what people thought and what praise you got and the rest of it, it don't matter, because whatever it was, I made sure that I thought, hold on a minute, this hasn't worked. I'm going to probably start fighting back now, and the old-fashioned way of try and get yourself in a better mindset, whatever it may be for, but to start and really climb the ladder again. And whatever you may do, because whether it's football or whether it's life, you are going to get a lot of knockbacks. And my granddad always used to say, tomorrow's another day. Absolutely. It certainly is.
So what led you down this path? You've left Hartlepool. Do you go and start doing coaching badges? How do you end up in recruitment?
I'll be honest, for the next couple of years, I didn't really know what to do. I played in the non-league scene and started to get quite a bit of success because I was such an early physical developer. And it's sometimes genetics in terms of, obviously, absolutely, your height's genetics, where I'm 5'7.5", but in terms of physical genetics, I'm quite blessed. I'm very, very strong and very robust. And from now, similar to back then. So I was always physically competitive to play at senior level when I was 14, if I was given that opportunity. So when I played non-league, it was probably a bigger crowd there. And I don't mean big crowds, but maybe from on the outset, it looked a bigger crowd because extrinsically, I can show people that, listen, I'm still around here. Whenever it matters, I always could show up really and perform. Whether that been ability-wise or whether it been physically dominance, or I was always able to sort of show up. And to be honest, I had a couple of seasons playing in the Northern League for a number of clubs, etc. Very inconsistent. Was my heart really in it? It was just what I was expected to do. But then the guy who actually was a real good mentor to me, I had a great time working under him, and we had a great time together. The guy who released me and probably never picked the phone up and said that I wasn't coming back actually brought me back in. He brought me back in when the academy set up the development centres in local sort of areas to be an attachment in the academy process. And I started coaching in those. The more and more I did, the more and more he put on me to do. And the more and more he put on me, the more and more I ate it up. And I thought, this is actually something that I'm really getting a lot of enjoyment out of doing it and actually getting some success. A guy who's called Ron Bourne, who's a great guy and a real good mentor to me over the years, and he's helped me massively. We always had a real good relationship. I saw him again a few weeks ago, and he looks $1 million. It was an alumni event at the stadium. Him and one of my other mentors, Dave Parnaby. So they both look incredible. The more and more they put on me, the more and more I did, and I was still working. I worked in a gym. I ran a youth centre. But I always made time for the football because that was my passion. The other stuff was something of a necessity, really. And then I got the opportunity to become full-time in 2003, and I'd already been part-time a couple of years from October 2000. So I've been coaching the development centre, scouting the development centres, scouting in the academy process.
In what club?
Middlesbrough. Been in Middlesbrough all the way through. Yeah. So from October 2000, I've been all the way from October 2000 to present. I coached and scouted academy development centres from October 2000 to 2003 when I went in full-time as assistant head of recruitment with the academy and continued to learn and develop, throw yourself at games, probably do more than you should do, spend more time away from home than you're at home, but that's what you do when you enjoy doing it. If you worked in another environment, no disrespect to anybody who works in any other environment, but when they finished, they finished. When we're finished, we're just starting again, when we come home.
Yeah. So what category is Middlesbrough?
Yeah, so
And how do you become that category, by the way?
Well, okay, so the academies were formed in 1998. Throughout the years, we were always really established and had a great platform to produce young players. So when I joined that, it was just part of the process to help and support the whole idea of producing young footballers for the football club. And then when the academies were categorised with EPPP, Middlesbrough were always Cat 1 and we still are Cat 1 now. Obviously, there's different levels in terms of financial output of Category 1, but in terms of our level, the chairman's mission statement is to give children of Teesside and surrounding areas opportunities to become footballers. So everything in our mindset is to be triggered off by those words. So yeah, we're Cat 1 now and forever, hopefully that will continue to be and strive to be the best we can be.
So going on to what you were saying, based on your experience and now as a head of recruitment, when it comes to the Q1 to Q4, what do we call it? Talks.
The relative age, yeah. So relative age effect, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you now, especially with the whole experience you went through, how do you view that?
Yeah. So believe it or not, I'm a Q4. So I'm August. However, people on the eye line and scouts at the time would have been looking at games and would have thought he has to be a September because physically he looks 2 years older than everybody else. He's starting to shave. His muscles are formed, and it sounds great, doesn't it? But I'm actually August. So the Q1 to Q4 is massively led by lots of professors and lots of indications around potentially this is why this looks like this. But there's no guarantees because you're a Q1, or he's an early developer, or if you're a Q4, he's a late one. However, if you're a Q4, you've actually been on the planet 11 months less than what your September birthdays have.
Yeah.
And when you're forming into new groups, remember when you were a kid, you used to go to the youth club, you could go when you start to be 7-year-old. But people in your class have been going 11 months earlier because they were 7 in September. So that relationships, that whole confidence, the character building is 11 months ahead of what you would be if you're a Q4. That can be counted against if you've got older brothers, older siblings, older sisters. The environment that you're living in, you might sort of be involved with people whose parents may run environments where there's lots of adults there, pubs or etc., where you're quickly connecting to older people as well. So I always think it's crucial to have an awareness of the relative age effect, but don't take everything as gospel, because if you do that, you start to look at this is what's going to happen, this is what will happen. I also deliver the talent ID courses for the FA, and we're massive on the relative age effect in Q1, Q4, but whoever forgets the Q2, Q3, that doesn't ever get mentioned anymore because we're obsessed about Q1s, Q4s. What about the threes align with the fours, the twos align with the ones? So we've got to be aware, we've got to be fully aware, but also relative age effect's not maturation. It aligns with it at some point, but the relative age effect is massively to have an understanding of the reasons why we always say look for moments rather than consistency, because the moments might be just snippets of talent where consistency might be experiences and relationships and character building that you're already more confident to be able to be successful for longer periods of time.
So along that line, right, like you said, you can spot, let's say, the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 person at 9 to 12. Being in recruitment, what do you think the right age is when you can really say, right, we can really judge that person based on what we're seeing? Because 9 to 12, you might say, well, there's still more growth to go. At what point do you say, I think that's what we're seeing and that's what's going to be?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is if you're going to go off initiative, you've got to have an open mindset, because your gut feeling, your initiative is built over a number of times of you getting successes correct or also getting your failures wrong or wrong at that time. So if you're quite a closed mindset and you're quite adamant, this is like my wife, this is how it is and this is how it's not.
I'm not involved in that, love.
It's a good job she's not in. So this is how it is and this is not how it is. And if you go off initiative, you will actually get the same decision wrong all the time, if that was wrong in the first place. Mm-hmm. So we always think you're identifying young footballers to sign in the academy the third Saturday in May for the 9th year. And I think we've got to be so mindful of there's such a fine line at that age. It's impossible to turn around and say, if you're taking 14, they're the best 14 that are going to be in the area. It's impossible. If we're quite lucky that we're surrounded by the North Sea and we're split into a low population around the demographics where there's lots of boys to supplement the three big clubs. If you go 100 miles further south, then you're in such a bigger formulated clubs and a bigger catchment. So your bigger, your better clubs and the more powerful clubs, they can turn around and sign your best Q1s because they're the best players. Ultimately, they've been playing 11 months before the others. They've been walking sometimes a year prior to somebody else. They've been born before the other one's been thought of. So they can do that. However, if you're then signing the third and fourth and fifth best Q1 players, actually, there's a big dropout by the time you get to 13s and 14s of Q1s. So ultimately, you're signing players off not necessarily their potential. You just sign them off their current performance, and the performance is going to be higher, ultimately, because they've been on the planet 11 months more. We've got to have an open mind. We've got to have each player, you've got to treat them individually. And you've got to see, you've got to visualize, you've got a crystal ball, what you think they could be like. Now, if I was visualizing myself many, many years back, I would look and I would see the early developer. I would see the physical, powerful aesthetics, but I would also see the performance didn't really align with the potential and the ability. So I would also take my strength away and think when he gets caught up, will he still have enough talent? Will he still have enough playing personality? Will he still have enough mileage when he gets matched? And ultimately, I didn't. But I obviously look at that now, and everybody looks at boys by the time they get to 12. And by the time they get to 12 and through that ladder from 12 to 16, everybody starts throwing these comments around oh, he's done physically. Okay. Wayne Rooney was probably done physically by 14. However, his talent aligned with his physicality and maturation. He's wonderful, wonderful. Probably at one point the best in the world. So his talent aligned with his physicality. So do you say, well, he's set, he's done? Of course you do. But also, and he's a wonderful player. Then there's other boys that go, oh, he's a late one, he'll be okay. Yeah, but you might have no football acumen, no football IQ, no real top talent if everything else falls into place. So we can look at late ones, we can look at early ones, but ultimately we've got to look at the individual to see what are their attributes, what we think they could be like if everything else falls into place. And we're still guessing. We can't guarantee, but we're guessing. But when myself has a guess on a player, I can look at a player and I'll go, don't really fancy him long term. And someone will say, well, you've only seen him for 2 minutes. What I'm doing is I'm probably going back in this scale in my brain from 25 years on this initiative, thinking, and I'm quite open-minded. I'm open to say that these ones that I haven't got right, I can probably see on the reasons why I don't think these will come through. Also on the ones that I've got right, I can possibly say, well, this one should have a little bit more mileage to come through. However, they're not the same genetics. They're not the same being. So we just don't know. But we probably have more of an understanding that they may come through or they may not than the general public. But there's no guarantee. There really is.
There never is. That understanding, is it more efficient between 14 to 16 than it is between 9 to 14?
I certainly think the older you get and the closer you get to being a senior or to being a youth player, you can start and visualize what they could be and where you think they can be formed, in what position and what area of the pitch you think their assets can benefit to play. Of course. At 9, 10, 11-year-old, you're just looking for moments that they show, because the rest of the time they're probably talking about when they get home and what they're going to be having for the tea and what they're going to play, what they're going to go on YouTube. You can't really start making statements. I'm a big believer from 12 to 16. I think you should guarantee keep the boys in the academy. It's not always the case, but I think you should. The reason being, some 12-year-olds look like they're 10. Some 12-year-olds look like they're 14. That's a 4-year span of what you think they could look like. Imagine, I'm 12, I'm playing against a 16-year-old. How does that look? that looks similar to when we've got boys at 12, the initial start of their growth sort of ladder and puberty maturity. They're a 12-year-old, they're playing against a 10-year-old, and they look like they're 14. So how do we judge the other boy? And how do we overjudge the boy who's getting a success? So I just think we've got to teach every boy on an individual basis, but we've also got to look at triggers and signs of what we've seen in prior players of what they potentially could look like. Again, it's not guaranteed, but you have a better understanding of the norm of what you think they could look like.
What is talent ID to you?
So for me, talent ID is crystal balling. It's crystal balling. It's having an understanding of what you see now isn't what you're going to see in 3, 4, 5 year time. Or if what you see now looks like what you're going to see in 3, 4, 5 year time, just be mindful of how excited you get around the current performance.
Right. So you've brought it up prior. You said there are some that you will see that you've gone on intuition, it's gone right, and it's gone wrong. What is the thing that has gone wrong in your experience that you could say you've got it wrong? What are the common themes?
I think it's quite harsh, and I probably should have edited what I've said in terms of gone wrong. But just probably because
didn't fulfill their potential then.
That's it. Absolutely. Not fulfilling their potential. If they're not fulfilling the potential, the first player whom you initially have identified when you start your journey shouldn't be the same aesthetic player that you sign 5, 6, 7 years down the line. And the reason being is that you learn between that first player and that 7 year down the line player. And when you see a player, I remember looking back many, many years ago, and the first player I brought in was massively on performance. And he actually signed into the academy. He had some real good moments. But eventually, I couldn't believe that at the time, as any other scout does. Can't believe they haven't took him. We went with another boy, and it's that ego again. But then you look back and you can have a total understanding why, because his mileage and his potential wasn't a longer term. It was more of a short term. And then you follow his journey afterwards and you look back and you're thinking, I can totally understand why we didn't persevere and didn't hold him out to carry on through the years.
So speaking on your successes, what does a player who has fulfilled their potential look like?
So I think your whole role is to identify players with the potential to develop further. And that's it. There's no guarantees if you spend money, if you have a budget to buy players at first team level. So there's certainly no guarantees when you identify in grassroots and district, county and rep side players or non-league gems. There's no guarantees. You have less guarantees with those. But I think you've just got to look at some of their characteristics. I always hear people talk about player profiles. What's your player profile? And I just think it's ludicrous, if I'm honest. You'll hear people saying, he's not a profile of ourselves. A profile should only be built and developed if you've got absolutely no restrictions. No restrictions. You've got any amount of talent to pool to recruit from. You've got any amount of financial stronghold to recruit. You've got any amount of player that you can go and identify. Then you can go, we want this, and this. If you're a club and you're in a rat race for a player, you've got to identify players to come into your program and to help the program and to help develop other players around you. You might actually looking for just maybe 2 characteristics or 2 aesthetic strengths. All the other things that in an ideal world you really want to see, but I can tell you now, when people say, I want my centre-backs to be 6'4", lightning quick, great with the ball, can step in, can develop the ball. Okay, well, who are you getting? Because every centre-back generally looks different. I see players, I remember some of the real outstanding players come through Middlesbrough's academy over the years, and Matthew Bates, centre-back, looked totally different to David Wheater. Nathan Wood-Gordon looks totally different to Dale Fry.
Height and size?
Just everything, because aesthetics they're not from the same genetic being. So Matthew Bates was maybe 5'11", quick, powerful, dominant, aggressive, had a real nasty streak, was a top player. But he looked totally different to David Wheater, who was 6'4", who was really technical, good with the ball, not as explosive or dynamic as Matty, but a really good footballer. So if you have an aesthetic profile of all the centre-backs to be 6'4", you don't take Matty Bates. Why wouldn't you do that? Because obviously characteristics, you can't have everyone that you want, because ultimately you've got to remember where you are, and you've also got to remember who you are, and you've also got to remember it's not necessary to have a real restricted profile, because ultimately they can grow in to what you actually want to do to carry the job out.
Yeah. So very, very, very interesting. Do you pick your scouting team? And how do you know this is a good scout that's going to be good for Middlesbrough?
Yeah. So we sometimes quite restricted in terms of this day of age, where in an ideal world, you want to bring people in to scout for you who have a similar understanding to yourself, open-minded, etc. But also you've got to recognize and realize that they haven't had that initiative experience over 25 years. So what I think the most important thing is, you want to bring somebody in who's a good person, who's willing, who's hardworking, who's open-minded and willing to get out of games. That's the most important thing. Get out of games, because if they're willing to get out of games, then they can start building up their initiative base over a number of years. What you find is now the newer generation of scouts want to quickly go from watching grassroots to scouting your senior footballers on the telly. Like all of a sudden, you go from watching an under-9 to saying, well, I want to scout a Martinelli for Arsenal. So it doesn't work like that. You've got to build that initiative up and experience up to rule in, to rule out, to have an understanding of youth development.
As a recruiter, when you look at a player, sometimes you will look at a player once, like you said, straight away you'll know with some players, yeah, he's ready. Some players you might go back 4 or 5 times and watch them over and over again. What's the difference between the two?
The more you go back and watch a player, the more you end up talking yourself out of it. So I go massively on instinct, massively. I remember signing a boy called Josh Coburn, who's currently flying with Millwall at the minute. I remember watching him play for North Yorkshire Schools under 15s. And Josh was so much of a late developer, but he had a huge frame. He was going to be late starting puberty. Physically, his body hadn't fallen into sync. He didn't move particularly well. Doesn't sound very good, does it? However, he had an ability. When he was through on goal, he could score. And he wasn't always able to get the chances to score. But when he was in those areas, he could score. And I remember bringing him in on trial at under 16s. And even the pre-job around the field was a stretch for him. But having an understanding over the previous years and the growth development ladder, I never went through that, because all of a sudden overnight I went from a boy to lightning quick in the first year comprehensive school. This boy, his growth ladder was over a period of time. And what happened was, under 16th year, everybody at the club has an understanding and has a real identity about giving players more time and having an understanding of what you see now is what you're going to see at 3 and 4 year time. Yeah, that's what I think success is. That's what I think. So if you see someone, me particularly, and you have a couple of aesthetic sort of what they look like and a couple of traits that you think what they could be like, that's enough for me. I can make a decision myself off a game. Not necessarily me being saying, oh, well, I can do this. And I'm not saying I'll get it right, but I can see some traits and some characteristics that I think they're certainly worth a bit more time. They've got some mileage. Let's see where we can get them.
What do you look for in the first 60 seconds?
I always have a massive bias to how they look, how they move, and just they have a way about them on the pitch, the way they glide, the way players potentially attempt to maybe do something, and we're willing to do something, but we're not always able. When I see that, I always think and start visualizing, start looking ahead and thinking, what would they be like when all this forms? Over the years, I've Nathan Wood-Gordon, who's now playing for Southampton. I remember seeing him at 13, and lots of people obviously looked upon him because his dad, Dean Gordon, was a very good player, played for Palace, Middlesbrough. But the hardest thing to judge is players in between that 12 to 16 who have hit that growth ladder, so they look awkward. Well, I love that because I can try and visualize what they're going to look like after that growth ladder. But they're the hardest ones because you bring them in and all the things that you're saying what they could be like, the coaches are saying, well, they're not doing it now. So it's hard for them to judge what they're going to be able to do now. But I'm visualizing what they're going to be able to do when they come through it. And so Nathan Wood, Josh Coburn, they were the real difficult ones because if I hadn't have done this for so long, I wouldn't have seen what they would have been like afterwards. But because I'd seen what they would have been like afterwards, there was some ones where I was adamant that we've got to recruit them because what they're going to be like is what we want to see. Because if we saw it before they were like it, we wouldn't have got them.
Yeah. So I'm a scout. I've come in, I've handed you a report. I've said, Martin, I've seen him. I've got one. What happens next?
So at our club, we don't have the volume of scouts like some of the other Cat 1 bigger clubs. So there's myself, the guy who works underneath me has a massive operation with the pre-academy, which it's probably the most important phase now at the club. And then in between that, we have two coordinators who do both sides of the Northeast. So I think we have lots of CPD discussions. We have an understanding of what we're looking for. But what you actually find is that the scouts, the longer they spend time with myself, the longer they spend time with viewing standards, they have an aesthetic model what they can picture. And what they tend to picture is players that have the potential to develop further. So they're not necessarily your physical developed player who looks as though they've hit the ceiling quite early. They're all players who you think they might have some outstanding quality with lots of other things that require urgent requirements to progress. However, the eye-catching outstanding quality gives them enough time in the building to work on the other things. So I think the understanding, which is key, is for the scouts to know myself, the scouts to know the club, the scouts to understand the groups, the scouts to understand our whole philosophy. The whole thing is about trying to produce a player with more potential than others to progress. And that is it. That is it. And then with a fair wind, you just never know. With a bit of luck, with a bit of time, opportunity, you really don't know. There's a number of boys over the years who I've brought into the system with one or two character traits, one or two aesthetic strengths. You never thought they'd get to where they got to. And when they get there, you thought, well, we always knew.
Why is the pre-academy phase the most important phase currently at the club?
Because of the demographics where we're based, and they're quite a goldfish bowl what we're in terms of population, and we're all fishing in the same pond. I think if you identify players at the younger age and you get it right, and I don't mean get it right as in you win games on a weekly basis, because I always panic me if we're winning on a weekly basis, because I always think, why are we winning on a weekly basis when we've got a less demographic and population to Sunderland and Newcastle? So why are we winning? I worry then, because we've got similar profiles, we've got similar sort of standard players, but we're winning every week. So if we're winning every week at the really younger age, there's got to be reasons I worry. Are the all Q1s? Are the all early physical developers that actually drive ahead early and get caught up like me? Are they those? So I'm quite happy with seeing some real nice moments during the game, some real individual brilliance, some real nice movement patterns. And if we get beat, I'm comfortable with that. Because when we get to 13s and 14s, those traits have the mileage and have the need to give us the patience to see where we can hit in and around that growth ladder at 12 to 16.
Brilliant. What is youth development to you?
For me, youth development's patience, because I look at youth development and I look at individual players. The massive thing for me is the more you watch players on a weekly basis, I was thinking about this, the more you get blinded in their performance and not what the potential looks like. So The difficult part from a coach, if you're watching a player every week and at the end of the season you're making a presumption or a stating a decision on that player, but you've seen him every week, you don't see what's out there. You don't see the potential because you see the boy every week. So I think youth development has to be sometimes take a step back, sometimes try and crystal ball and visualize their strengths, what they can do, not what they can't do. Let's just be patient. I think everyone's in a rush to get boys progress through the ages. Everyone's in a rush. Oh, he's done well this week. He needs to play up and be tested. I think everyone's has to develop an understanding of where the kid is. He might be physically early, he might be dominant, but actually, what's he like as a boy? Can he fit in with the group in the year above? He may not be able to. He might be comfortable in his own little group around him. And we say, yeah, but he's got to learn that. Not at 12, 13, he hasn't. We've got lots of time. And I think the thing where we also get it wrong is making rash, impulsive decisions on a Sunday after the Saturday game. So I think youth development should be, rather than ring somebody up after a game and say, who did well, who didn't do well, what was the score? Let's wait a couple of days and review it, because I think your answer and your decision is different from the day after to what it is the day after that and what it is to straight after the game, because we all going off emotion. We all love it. We all enthusiastic. We're all desperate for success early. But I think if we wait, we can put things in perspective and go back to the individual and where we think he is.
You look at a player and you think he's good, well talented, but what's one of the biggest red flags that's put you off a player or players?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because I always look at the positives really of the player and sometimes then overlook some of the real red flags. And I've done this over the years where I remember seeing a real dominant performance and in a game and thinking 100% we need to move on this player. But then turning my eyes away from the noise behind some of the characteristic traits, away from the field that I haven't seen. What you see is easy to judge. What you don't see is quite difficult. So I think sometimes you can be so biased on certain performances in terms of not necessarily the early development like we spoke about, but the performance, the maverick moments, the real eye-catching, hair stand on the back of your neck traits, and then anything bad we hear about the player, the character, the home life, what the boy gets up to, or anything like that, we just go, yeah, he'd be all right. He'd be all right. Because we've seen scout reports, we have target lists, we have restrictive, positive things we see and negative things we see. But as soon as we see talent, that all goes out the window because we just want to recruit the player. And rightly so, because there always should be a mindset of thinking, do you know what? Boys can make mistakes, girls make mistakes, but they learn from it. We go off initiative. Why wouldn't they learn from what they've done in the past? So we've also got to be mindful and aware of that.
So, results or development?
I certainly think the result is important, absolutely. But if the result isn't successful, we also got to have an awareness of why it wasn't successful and awareness why it was. So if we look to have the best individual potential in the game, the result's not important. If we look to have the best potential in the game and the result's successful, brilliant. If we win the game and we don't have individual players who have the potential to develop further, I think it's a massive red flag. And I think it's hard then to start saying, well, I worry about this, I worry about that. I'm concerned about the development of this player and that player because everyone else goes, I know, but they just won the game. So you've got to try and visualize the individual player and their progress rather than the result. It's massive because we can get so carried away and we can get so het up about the result of the game, which is fine as long as we have an understanding of why the result went like that and why the successes were like that and why the negatives were like that as well.
What do you think about data in football?
I think I don't know enough about it in terms of the having that clear understanding about it. All I'll say is I've done quite a bit of work with first team over the years, and a good friend of mine, obviously, and a real top player, Jonathan Woodgate, was manager at the time, and Woody would tell me to go and watch this player and go and watch that player, etc. And we have a great relationship now, and a real football fanatic he was then, and he is about players, you know, a real love for it. And he's so enthusiastic, and he'd ask me to go and watch a player, and he'd tell me about, oh, his numbers are good, and I would always think his numbers are good, but I'll go and watch the game, and the environment's different, the tempo is different, the intensity is different, the physicality is different, but his numbers may be good, but is that always aligned with the same leagues? Is that always a transferable skill from Europe or abroad to England? It isn't always. And sometimes you don't have the time to develop those type of traits and potential into clear performances. You don't get the time. Yeah, so in terms of numbers, they might look eye-catching in certain leagues, but are they transferable to what we want? And a lot of that I doubt. I doubt that because I've seen it. But then data guys will turn around and tell me that this is a fit for this because of this, this, and this. And listen, academically, they're probably a lot cleverer than me, so I wouldn't disagree. But again, I'm working off initiative over 25 years, and what I've seen and over the years, I've seen clearly that there's nothing can beat just having a smell of the pitch, having a smell of the environment, seeing the tempo, seeing the intensity, seeing the physicality up close, seeing the aesthetics. I don't think you can beat that, because when you're at pitch side looking at players, I think you get just a feel for it. Can they adapt? It's hard to do that from a screen or from numbers. But I'm not saying I'm right, and I'm not saying the others are wrong. I don't have enough understanding of it, to be honest, to make a clear point of it. That's the first time I haven't given you a definitive answer.
So you've been obviously at Middlesbrough. Do you do academy tours? And if you do, what's the benefits of it?
Yeah, we do academy tours. Obviously, when you're a Cat 1 club, you're certainly given a push and a direction to get out and obviously give the kids as much experiences as possible. And I think every experience is where whoever you're playing and wherever you play is a positive one, even if it can be negative in terms of the success on the pitch. So being away from parents on parent-free events with the FA and the Premier League now is success, because we all have this awful habit of parents of talking for our children, and we start talking for them when they can clearly speak better than what we can. So every time my daughter's 18, and when she was younger, someone would say, have you had a good day? I said, oh, she's had a great day. She's been here. And she looks at me and go, Dad, ma, I can say that myself. And she can. So I think when you're away from the parents, they develop personality, they develop character, they develop a whole all-round understanding of themselves. And I think we've got to allow that to happen slowly. Sometimes we can rush them to do that and they're not ready, but that doesn't mean that they're any further forward or further behind on what they're going to look like. It's just that some kids take a little bit longer than others to develop their personality. So, yeah, I think experiences help develop that, particularly from single child who are in the academy. When they go away from leaving mom and dad at home, obviously I think it's tough for them, but there is benefits to that. When you've got brothers and sisters, it's great to get away from those, and also mum and dad go out, they're left with your brothers and sisters, so you have more of an understanding of what it's like to be away from them. So the experiences and the development of kids is crucial to help with the knockbacks and the striving areas of football and life.
In your time at Middlesbrough, you've seen grassroots trialists come into the club. Some have made it over the line to become an academy player, some haven't. What are the common things that you've seen that separates a grassroots player to a academy level player?
Do you know what? I was saying this the other day to some of my scouts. There's such a fine line. The younger they are, there's such a fine line. And I'm a big believer of when a boy comes in on trial, I think you've just got to look for even less moments than what you would look for as an academy player. Because ultimately, the hardest thing in the world is coming into an environment as an adult You come to an environment, you don't know many people, you look straight away for a comfort, and the comfort is who you know. If you don't know anybody, imagine putting all that together. And if you're a Q4, I remember years and years ago, Dale Fry is one of the best academy products been from Middlesbrough. And I remember he came into the sessions really late in the season, and he's an August birthday. And Dale stood at the side of the pitch, and he wouldn't go on and play because he didn't know anybody. And obviously he was 11 months younger than some of the other strivers. But his striving was actually just coping. So that's key for me. He coped in a game where others were striving, but that was his striving by coping, because obviously he didn't know anybody, hadn't played at that level, and he was 11 months behind everybody else. And by just coping, we were so excited by his potential, because he was a Q4. When others were walking, he wasn't thought of. So you've got to link all that in together. So a trialist, I think they've just got to show moments. The first thing they've got to do is come in and let the shackles off, really, because they're quite restricted when they come through the door. They're quite uptight and they don't want to make mistakes. And I think that the quicker you can make a mistake as a young player, the quicker you can get over that and go, do you know what? It ain't the worst thing in the world. And be happy making mistakes, because the more you're happy making mistakes, you're more willing to try those things. And then we've got to be able to visualize, well, actually, it's more a willingness rather than an able. And when everything falls into place and they become more confident and have more belief, well, actually, he might have more potential than what our own have. We just got to see moments and then give them more time.
So you were saying, as a kid, you went from centre back to midfield, right?
Yeah.
So how do you now, when you, I don't know, the coaches at the club, they tell a boy, you're centre back, you got to be a midfielder or whatever, and they don't take the news too kindly. How do you guys deal with that?
I think it's just education with parents, education with players, and I think showing examples of when players first come in the door to when they leave the building or carry on their career elsewhere. That's when they first come in the door is not necessarily what they look like when they leave the door. So I sometimes think you look at players when they come in and they certainly suited to playing in certain areas of the pitch. That's quite simplistic. Longer term, they may be suited to play in other areas of the pitch, which include myself. So obviously, I think we've got to be aware of what success they get now. Don't take that away, because everyone wants to have success, but also introduce them to areas of the pitch where you think they might end up long term. So it's not new to them. So absolutely, a kid comes in, scores 40, 50 goals at grassroots level. He comes in and we go, right, you want to play left back now? He'd probably leave in 2 weeks' time thinking, I don't want to do this. But actually, long term, you think, well, actually, when you take all his strengths away and he gets matched up, will he get them same goals long term? We don't know. But what we do is we leave him as a forward and get scoring goals and enjoying it, and then saying, listen, let's give him a period at left back. Don't take the enjoyment away, but also introduce areas where you think he might play. And then when all of a sudden we say, we told you so, and he plays left back, actually, it's not new to him.
Yeah. So when it comes to parents who, let's say, are on the more challenging side, I wouldn't want to say difficult, does it affect...
No, you can say difficult.
And when it comes to difficult parents,
Yeah.
does it affect the boys? Does it affect your opinion of a player at the club?
Listen, I think everybody has generally real good natures and lots of positive, good attributes as people. Everybody, no matter how small or how big they are. However, when it comes to football, people change, don't they? Because everybody has opinion. Everybody has that's my opinion and that's what I'm thinking. Everybody has that opinion because it's everybody's number one sport. It's everyone's number one hobby. Once again, I think that's got to be a slowly built and developed education from the moment you come into an academy to the moment you leave. So I think when a boy first comes into the academy with his parents for the induction, it's got to be reiterated right from the start, where actually, if you come into the academy and as a parent, if you're saying, right, you're going to have the car, the house, the jewelry, the money, all the attributes to go with what your performance could look like, you'll hate every minute of it. You'll hate every minute of it because you'll feel so uptight and you'll feel so. I just think you'll feel so much pressure, which is needless. But if you come in the academy having an understanding for the longer period I'm here, in my journey, I'm going to have an opportunity to play against Manchester United, play against Newcastle, Leeds, Sunderland, Everton. I'm going to train 3 nights a week. I'm going to have the opportunity to go on tournaments away from mum and dad and play in these lovely pitches. You'll love every minute of it, however long that journey lasts. So there's 2 areas of how you can take it. If you think you're going to have all this glossy manufactured world, which I probably thought at the time, you'll find so much pressure and so much just unforeseen stress. But if you're just given that opportunity, come in, go and play with your mates, you make loads of new friends, you're going to train 3 nights a week, you're going to play on a Sunday, you love it. You love it. So parents, once they understand and they agree to everything, and then as soon as they forget everything. So once they understand that, and nothing's personal, every decision that's made is not personal. We've got a job which everybody else has a similar job outside of football in different careers, different areas really, and they've got to do the best for their job, and we've got to do the best for ours. And ultimately, it's first and foremost is have the kids at the forefront of how we look after them, how we direct them, how we make them better people, how we give them a great experience. But also when that experience comes to an end, we did all we could to get them in the building, but now we've got to do all we can to help them on their way to find a different direction. Massively for me.
So how do you guys treat lateness at Middlesbrough?
Treat lateness?
Yeah.
This is a difficult one, because what people don't understand, I hear lots of experienced coaches, and if kids are late, if kids are coming in 20 minutes late on an evening from 9 to 16s, etc., I always say, well, the boy doesn't drive, so he can't. We've got to have an understanding that if boys are coming from all different parts of the northeast and mums and dads are racing back from work to pick the boy up, and then they're 20 minutes late because they've drove an hour in traffic, you've got to have an understanding. You've got to have a real understanding way about you, and you've just got to preempt that things can like happen. As they get older, and there's no excuses that they're late, I think over the years, some of the boys who I signed a boy from Tooting and Mitcham non-league, Isaiah Jones, and I think his first day he was late. And honestly, I remember I've seen him a podcast a couple of years ago, and he said, if you're not careful, you're getting back on that train and back to Tooting and Mitcham if you're late again. And he's such a good kid and a really talented boy now. But when he was younger, it was the adaptation of a professional environment to a non-league environment. You've got to quickly grasp it, because if you don't, you'll get more rollickins than what you ever have.
What is that professional environment like in terms of time?
Standards. Yeah, standards. I think obviously in our PDP phase, the under 18s, under 21s, the standards is so sort of set and so adamant, because there's an understanding of once you leave that environment and you go and play, if you're very, very lucky at a professional level, that's the norm. So if your standards aren't met there, absolutely, we're not doing our job, or we're not giving the kid the best opportunity to be successful. Because if we're quite loose with lateness, loose with standards, then when they get to the higher level, believe me, they won't know what's got them really. And when they go with your senior managers who are desperation for results on a Saturday, and if you're late, they're not buying into what you're trying to do. But if we sort of quite loose with them overall standards early, then we're not setting them up for success. We're setting them up for controversy straight away.
Yeah. So how are you when it comes to release and retain periods emotionally?
Yes, that'll actually be coming up shortly. And my wife always says, I can tell when it's this time of year, because we get so attached. We get so attached to kids, not because of the football, just because kids, you have an automatically, if you have kids yourself, you have an automatically understanding of what if that was your kid. So I think right from the start, you've got to be so honest and open. And if you're honest and open, you can get close with kids and parents and be as friendly and as open as possible, because that's what we should be. We have to respect that if it wasn't for these parents or these kids, we wouldn't have an academy. But also they've got to respect that we've got a job to do, and it's got to be for the beneficial of the club, because our job aligns with the club. So it's not nice. It really isn't. But if I'm honest, after the return release, I spend more time on those players, trying to help them find different careers, trying to help them find clubs, than I do on the boys that are in the building. So I make sure of that. I really do. And I have to say, it is really difficult, because you do get attached, and you do like some of their personalities and characters, and they grow on you. And don't forget, I've been here 25 years, so some of them have been with us longer than they haven't. So it's normal to sort of feel upset and feel real concerned. But it's just the start of their journey. They're so young, and they've got lots of positives to have down the line, the same as I did.
What are the main reasons or things that you've seen that released players have in common?
I think what you find is the reason why players actually get released is generally not because of their talent, because the highlighted talent gets them in the door, but the actual character and just the basics around their drive, their enthusiasm, their energy, their whole character, the way they approach, the professionalism, the way they sit every day, the way they look after themselves, the way when their mates are going out on a weekend, they'll be out as well. I always find that those traits, those character traits, but even slightly different, where actually you've got to be able to suffer setbacks. You've got to be able to, the coach shouting at you over emotion, you've got to be able to get over that quickly. You've got to have tough skin. You've got to be resilient, because talent will get you in the door, but everybody's talented at some point. Everybody has a ceiling of talent at some point, because everybody's come in the door with that talent at different stages. So we all have it. It's just then, what can you do more than the other person with the similar talent at that stage of how you can progress? Everybody has talent at some point, but then it'll get taken away from them when it gets matched. So what have you got to go again and to progress and to show that real, just that determination to form someone's bias about you, that you're going to work hard for them.
So character versus talent.
Yeah. So I think it probably aligns, but I would go for talent every day. And the reason being is that I think that's at certain levels. I think you see lots of players, and I've seen lots of stages of different leagues, different formats, and you see players who make livings, but they hit a ceiling because they haven't got talent. But their output is the same every week, so they're trusted. But then when you see someone with moments of talent, moments of explosive pace, moments of maverick type ability, that gets me going every time. So even they might not have the character, I would always still give them the opportunity, just because those moments, I always think the other bits can always be worked upon. Listen, a lot of the time they can't, but I still want to give them that opportunity.
So how important is sleep and nutrition to football in this modern time?
It's massive, because I remember when I played, when I was a youngster, and everybody did the same thing. Everybody did the same things. Everybody ate and drank what they wanted and trained the same times, and everyone did everything the same. So really, whoever had the better genetics and better aesthetics was the one who had the better performances, where now it's more individually based. So on an individual basis, everyone has different aesthetics, different genetics, different strengths, different weaknesses. So anything that can be introduced to give you fine margins is massive, massive, because you might have good physical genetics and you might have real good output. What happens is, if you take that away from you and you get matched up with somebody who has maybe not as sort of aesthetics, or maybe not as positive or natural sort of gifted what you have, but is willing to work harder, is willing to eat right, willing to refuel in the right times. Similar to what I did, you may hit a ceiling earlier than what others do, and they come over the top of you, and because they've already chased you to get to where you were, they're still chasing for the next one, and you can get left behind. So fine margins are key. Just the whole new sort of departmental sort of in the building. There's psychologists, there's people who can help you develop they can get you on your analytics and show you where you go well, where you don't go well, how you can improve. So things that you can see, your food intake, your refueling. There's lots of things there set out. It's whether you want to embrace them all and take it on board.
So a player goes out on loan and it doesn't quite work out, and they come back totally different. It's not his confidence. He's not the same. What do you base that down to?
I think it's got to be experience but we also have to have an understanding that if we turn around and say, we're going to send a boy out on loan, we've got to have an understanding why we send him out on loan. We've got to have an understanding of what he's going to get from the loan. And we've also got to put in perspective that your first loan might be a stretch. It might be tough, but it's an experience. We all make decisions and all judgments out there on first and second loans, but it's quite sort of statistically, I know I'm not a massive on statistics that we've just said, but statistically, what is the most successful is the third loan. So that's where they get there. So we're making judgments on the boy, first loan, second loans, but actually right across the board, statistically, which is true, the third loan's the most successful. So actually, I think the most important thing, going back to what we spoke about earlier, patience, and expecting things to, if they go wrong, have an understanding of why they go wrong and have an understanding why they stretch and have an understanding that it's not the end of the world. We've got to put as many experiences, put as many building blocks into these young players to when things don't go well, they're not dropping from here to there. If we make the real positives there and the negatives there, the platform's only like this and it isn't dropping too far. If we put the positives up here and the negatives down there, it's like you're dropping off the end of a cliff and it's hard to get back up to that level. So let's keep things on a nice even keel where if it's a bad loan or if it's not a positive one, let's just keep it. Listen, it's a stretch, but have an understanding of where they are. And if it's positive, let's not get too overboard because then the drop becomes bigger when the next knockback happens.
What characteristics do you look for in a scholar?
I think scholars are very, very young still. So at under 18s, we still look at just one or two traits that we think we still don't actually know where the boys are going to end up playing. We still actually, I don't think, know what level or what ceiling they're going to get to. So I think we can all talk about the characteristics, absolutely, but we've also got to realise that under 18s, they're still very, very young. They're all blue-eyed, bushy-tailed, desperate to please, so they'll do what they're told. When they get to 21s, that's much difficult because they're finding their feet then, they're becoming men, so they're going to quiz and question what you have to say, and some think they should be playing the first team, and some people think they should be out on loan, and some think that they're the best players, and some think that they're going to get released at the end of the season, where at 18s, they're still babies, really, and they're still finding their feet. I think the characteristics have just got to be, for me, they've got to be resilient and they've got to be open-minded. So when things go wrong, you've got to bounce back, but also be open-minded. Be willing to be told and to be helped and supported. Don't put the old barrier up and not allow someone to say, well, actually, I think you need to do that better there. Who, me? Like I was.
So what is resilience?
I think resilience for me is having a bad game, things not going right for you, and still being willing to take the ball in and try and make the right decisions, do the right things. The basics that you know sometimes aren't always going to come off. So if you're a fullback and you're taking the ball in, if your team wants to develop through the thirds, and all of a sudden you've made a couple of mistakes, you've been done by the wide player, and as soon as you get it, you're trying to go along all the time, and that's not the way you want to play. Take the ball in and try and develop it. Keep doing the things that you're asked to do and taught to do, and keep doing the things you've been encouraged to do. Keep doing the things that you've spoke about doing. That's resilience. Listen, there is times where you've got to make the right decisions, where things are getting tight and it's not working, then you've got to be bright. All the best players are the best decision makers. All the best decision makers become the best players. However, I think at the younger ages, when coaches and when players and when people are asking you to play this way or to form, to develop the ball that way, and all of a sudden something goes wrong and then you change your whole game, that's where resilience has got to come in and bravery to try and do the right things.
So adaptability is key then.
Adaptability, yeah.
Yeah. So what is your idea of a model pro?
I think we have a bias towards that because everybody who looks upon themselves and the traits that the environment that you've been brought up in, that you live in, I was speaking the other day and we talk about when we played and years ago and when you were sent around the pitch 13 times for messing about or being cheeky or stuff like that. If you did that now, you'd be hauled in front of people saying you shouldn't be doing it. So I just think the model professional is someone who tries to do the right things at the right times and it doesn't have to be a shout, it doesn't have to be a ball, it doesn't have to be a slapping people on the back and shouting. I think it just has to do the right things at the right times. And when people on the pitch has required you to take responsibility, they're willing to do that and put other people in front of themselves. I think that they're real, true professionals. We had one a couple of years ago in the first team. Listen, we have more than one, but we had one that come to light massively for me, Johnny Howson. Wasn't a shout there, wasn't a baller, but what he did do was do the right things at the right time, so adaptable and just willing to go and speak to kids and to help them and support them. And yeah, Jonathan Woodgate was the same. Massive modern professional where lots of injuries, lots of restrictions on how career he was going to get to. But you know what, had this even, well, he's my age actually, but even at like 38, 39, 40, always had time for people, always had the time to try and help them, had a real enthusiasm around the way he spoke to people, and just had a love for the game. He tried to do, we don't get it all right, but you try with the best intentions to get it right. I think that's a modern professional.
So do you liaise with the first team managers or the first team head of recruitment to say, because your job is like to see it from 9 all the way to under 21s. Is there a thing where it's like a certain particular, I know you said no profiles, but is there a certain link between you and the first team, what they're looking for and what the academy's looking for as well? How is that working, juggling that?
Again, I think there's got to be an understanding of where we are and obviously the demographics, what we're in and the population where we are. So I think we've got to look for, I think the link between, we've got a sporting director, which is Kieran Scott. We've got a chief scout, head of recruitment, Chris Jones. We obviously have good relations and communication from first team down to academy. Of course we do. We have tech board meetings, which we align and link from the academy into first team. So I think we're all aware of what we do and we're all aware of have an understanding of where we see things, like along that line, if you like, along the sort of academy. It's like a piece of string. What kids look like at 7 to what they look like at 12 to what look like 16 or first team players. So, yeah, I think there is an understanding of what we all do, and we've got to pull it all together. And I think there's got to be also a trust thing as well, where we all have experience at certain levels, and it's sort of have an understanding of where we get our success from. So I totally have an understanding of that first team is priority, because ultimately, if the first team is doing well and the results are positive and progression is occurring nicely, everywhere has a feel-good factor, everywhere else is able to progress along with it. So it's got to be all aligned. Watching players, watching games, have to be able to fit certain characteristics of what we think has the potential to develop further. So I think it's all got to be aligned, but it's different, but the same, because what you look for at academy player and what we aesthetically identify and what we see attributes and characteristics can be formed with time and patience and opportunity. So there's players who in the past who may not be the striver in the group, but we talk about model professionals, and them attributes as a model professional can be highlighted and biased towards people up above all of a sudden they take a fancy for the player, and all of a sudden the ones who you thought could go above him, he's there, and we go, well, actually, we have an understanding where there's more than one type of player that fits to progress.
Do you think facilities, good facilities, can blind a young player?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes I think the whole modern facilities now, they're wonderful. You feel as though you've got to clean your shoes before you go in them, and you look at the pictures, they're wonderful. And I think sometimes I always say they look well in 5 or 10 year time when they've been worn in a little bit, because that's ultimately a lot of the boys and a lot of the players who are in these sort of fantastic facilities is not going to be where they stay. So a lot of the credentials and a lot of the fruits that come with them is not what's always going to be had. So I think, yeah, sometimes you can get a bit blinded. Sometimes you can get overly sort of used to this is what it looks like. But actually, you've just got to probably experience as many different playing on the park, playing on non-league grounds in front of players, in front of staff, parents, etc., where you're getting hounded a bit of stick, and then playing on these wonderful pitches as well, because where you start is not always where you end up. And that can be in both ways. So when you start at one of these top unbelievable facilities with wonderful grass pitches and wonderful coaches, you might end up playing in the non-league where you've only got 30 people watching. They've paid £5 to see you, and they're not happy that you're not producing you. Or you start that level and you go to that, you've got to quickly adapt. So like we spoke about before, adaptable players, modern professionals, an open-mindedness to be willing to accept change and move with it.
What have you learned about this job in recruitment that you didn't see coming or you didn't think or expect?
To be honest, because again, the limited amount of staff that we've had over the years, you get the opportunities to learn different things that other bigger clubs and people in those positions will never ever do. So I've been around the world watching games for the first team, and some of the experiences that you've seen out there are wonderful. Then I've watched pre-academy under 8s to support that process. And then you've watched under 18s and under 16s. So you vary, and people always say, "Oh, it's difficult to go from first team to under 8s to." But what happens is the more you see it, the more initiative you experience, and then you're able to build from what they look like at 8 to what they look like at 12 to what they look like, and the characteristics that take at a senior level. But yeah, I've seen it all. Honestly, like I say, in 25 years, I've seen it all. And the things that people sort of say, "Do you do that? Well, do you pick a transfer from the airport?" Of course I do. We just signed a Ghanaian boy, and he's asking me to take him for a haircut. and I said, "Oh, there's a guy I know from Middlesbrough who'll do it, and he's called Martins." And he's texted me, send me a picture of dreadlocks, saying, "Can you do it like that?" I said, "No, that's not me. I'm Martin." So, yeah. So listen, anything that you've got to just roll your sleeves up and throw yourself into it, because if you aren't blessed with lots of staff and across your department, you've got to be quickly adaptable and willing, and no ego. You've got to be open and happy to help and support, and because there's only you who's going to do it.
As you said about no ego, coming from that as a younger player, what advice would you give a player full of ego?
I think having confidence and having a willingness to believe in yourself in amongst players who you go into new groups and you're confident and you have that inner belief, I think that's good. But also having an ego, I think there's times and places, because people can also sort of be put off by the way you can come across. And that might be just you, where you're from. So I think it's not necessarily, as long as you're willing to do the hard yards, willing to be open-minded, to listen, to learn, to be receptive. Everyone has an ego, but you've also got to have an understanding of how you can make other people feel around you. And I think you're going to need those supporting teammates, supporting staff around you before they need you. So I think sometimes the way you come across, the way you highlight your personality is great if you're confident. It's great if you have that real inner self-belief. But most important thing, be a good person. Be a good person, because people will become biased towards you there, and then you'll get an edge up on the way. And there's nothing the matter with having an ego, but try not to be deluded or entitled with it. You've got to still do the hard yards.
Left-footed or right-footed? What catches your eye?
Left-footed,
Why?
because I look back in some of the plays that I've seen over the years. Stewie Down had a left foot like silk. I guess looking back over the year, yeah, Stewie was probably my favourite player. And yeah, had a real silk left foot, receiver, ball manipulation, left-sided centre backs. I love those as well. Yeah, where they step in and hit that diagonal pass. Yeah, absolutely. But then I guess my bias is aesthetics, what they look like. Someone who looks as though they've got loads to come, loads more to come. Someone who's explosive and quick and dynamic without hitting their peak. Someone who moves ever so well without already moving ever so well. Yeah. Yeah. We could talk all day about the football and the aesthetics and what they look like and where you think they're going to get to, etc. Yeah, absolutely.
What is a pathway?
When people mention what's my pathway, again, I could cringe at times. I think it's ludicrous. So people say, what's my pathway? Well, actually, a pathway should be, if you're good enough, you should get opportunities. But opportunities may only be coming at a 15, 20-minute slot. When you're given that opportunity, you have got to take it. You have got to take it. I think a plan should look better than a pathway. So a plan is, this is what our high potential player looks like. This is what our late developer looks like with high potential. And this is what our early developer looks like with good potential. This is a plan that we're going to do for the individual. If you say, what's his pathway? Well, ultimately, if he's not performing or he's not putting the hard yards in or he's not doing the extras to get the way he gets where his pathway will be on his way out before he gets a pathway. Your pathway in the first team is that if you're better than the player you play alongside, then you play ahead of him. If you don't, you won't. But a plan is a more realistic statement because we've got a plan to what we could potentially do with our high potential players and how we give them the opportunity to form their potential and to hit their ceiling. If we don't have a plan, then it can look a bit messy and it looks a bit, we don't know what we're doing. But a pathway, that's down to themselves. They create their own pathway with performances.
I've just been released from Middlesbrough. What's your typical advice to me?
I always say it's personal opinions. It's opinions. It's basically succession plans. So it's what we may have underneath you, what we may have up above you. We think you're going to be a player, but underneath and up above it, probably a little bit more either a head on potential and a head on performance, head on attributes. And sometimes if we let you come out and find you somewhere, a home now, you might not get lost a little bit down the line. So I think it's always done with a plan. If we let you go now, we may be able to get you an opportunity where someone will be able to give you a better plan than what we will, because it's blocked with ourselves, with people up above, people below. Certainly nothing personal, and certainly we've got to do all we can to help them find their own feet and find their own pathway of a direction where they want to go.
What does Martin's typical recruitment day at the club look like, if there's any kind of typical day? Like, I'm new to this. I just want to know, what does he do on a daily basis or weekly basis?
Yeah, so if you look at it, honestly, it's a different job to anything in the world. So sometimes you can go in the building at 9 o'clock and you don't step back in the house till 10. And that's normal. So if you tell people how many hours you do, they'll just go, what? And you'll go, yeah, that wasn't as much as I did last week. So I think through the week, we've a lot of it's like, without having minute meetings, you're having meetings about players you're doing. If at the end of a player's journey, if you have a discussion with parents, I always say, if you were a fly on the wall on a day-to-day meetings, you'd walk out, shake our hand and think, because we do all we can in discussions during the day to find areas of the pitch where they might be able to give their assets. We find certain plans for them to, if we get them out loan there, might give them enough time to come back and have some sort of strong possibilities at the end of the season to play in the 21. Honestly, everything's around the player. So what we can find, what we can plan for them to help get to hit their potential. I'll go in and obviously I'll watch players on Scoutastic, report on them, put them on the system. We'll have discussions on players, obviously, throughout all the phases. across pre-academy, youth development phase, foundation phase will be signed. And then I'll be watching players out of the office for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, back Wednesday, off Wednesday, have to do something with the missus and the daughter. Then Thursday, we start at 9 o'clock. Yeah, honestly, no week's the same, but I guess you just get used to it.
You enjoy it?
If you didn't enjoy it, I think if you didn't enjoy it and you didn't come in and go, tomorrow's another day at times, sometimes you can get really bogged down. Sometimes you can get really personal things. You can get upset. You can come in, you can think tomorrow's another day and we go again. And I think you've just got to always keep the young player at the forefront of how you can help them, because that's ultimately you've done all you can to get them in the building. So you've got to do all you can once they're in the building and all you can when they leave the building to help them.
Yeah. Final 4 questions all roll into one. What qualities do you need to be a good academy player, academy coach, academy scout, and a head of academy recruitment?
So the qualities that you have to have to be academy player, I just think you have to show a moment. That might be it. You might be able to show a moment that actually people turn, and it might be a moment that actually doesn't get confirmed. So the intention, you've got to have the attention to see something that other people don't. You've got to have that ability to move that other people find it a stretch or restrict. You've got to find that ability. It might be just a moment that you see in the game. That might be it. That might be enough. Academy coach has got to be patient, has got to have an understanding of youth development, have got to come away from performance over potential. If you start talking about performance every week, you sometimes clouds your judgment on what you think the individual is going to be 3, 4, 5 years down the line, other than what they're going to be like on a Saturday or a Sunday. What else did we say? Academy coach,
Scout.
academy player,
Scout.
academy scout. It's got to have an understanding of youth development, of maturity, of what kids look like now is not what they're going to look like in 2, 3, 4 year time. Has got to buy into, be open-minded around getting things wrong. If you get things wrong, it's great, because next time you'll try in different scenarios, different formulas to get it right. You've got to be open-minded, because if you're not, then you can't go on intuition. If you're not open-minded and you get it wrong, you'll continue to be on intuition, but you'll continue to get it wrong. So if you get something wrong and you're open-minded, the next time you'll get it right, and you'll build up that process in your mind over a scale of time. What else are we at?
Academy
Head of
recruitment.
What I've found over the years, I think what you've got to be able to do, you've got to put your opinion across. You've got to have an opinion, and you've got to really believe in what you do. I can't do anything else apart from the one thing I know, and I'm very confident in doing, is identifying potential with the talent to progress further. I'm comfortable in speaking about things like that to whoever it may be and whatever scale they are, because I have that belief, I have that understanding. You've got to really fight for the player if you believe in it. Even if you decide collectively that it's not the right decision to take the player further forward or recruit the player or sign the player, you've got to really not put your neck on the line, but you've got to really back what you believe. And I think you've got to be patient and calm. And obviously you've got to have an understanding of, we all started at one point as a scout and we all were so enthusiastic about a player, and don't always write players off early, because we've all got to look at what it takes for their journey and their development and progression. Probably from my point of view, I think the most important thing, you've got to visualize what they could look like, not what they are now. You've got to be patient. If you're not patient, you'll make rash decisions on performance. And if you do that, then you cloud your judgment of where you think they're going to get to, and you'll end up making the wrong decision. In a few years' time, you'll go, well, we should have been a bit more patient with that one.
Yeah. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you would like to say?
No, not really. No. I just think you try to. I think in my role, you've got to be so passionate about player development, player understanding, and I think the most important thing for me, anybody out there who's recruiting, the big thing for me is don't confirm players' potential on current performance. That's where you'll get it wrong. You've got to You've got to believe what you're able to crystal ball, what you're going to see at the end. You might not be always right, but you've got to give that player time, and you've got to be patient if they show moments of potential. Absolutely, when they get older, that their moments have got to become more consistent, and also you've just got to, you have got to have a real understanding that kids, young players, are not going to be consistent. So I said to someone the other day, he built this player up to me saying how good he was, etc., etc., etc. And then when you go in to watch him, his performance wasn't great, and he was so devastated. I said, well, if I turn around and say as a 14-year-old and you build him up and you say how good he's been and he doesn't play very well, we should expect that because they're inconsistent. They've got lots of things going on at school, got lots of things going on developing the maturation, the puberty, adolescence. So why should we think they're going to be consistent? We just got to see moments that they're doing, and that's enough to think, well, actually, we've got to give them a little bit more time and they've got more mileage to come.
So you did say something there quickly. You said about school. How do you think balancing education and football is like for a teenager?
I think it's very difficult because it's all right us turn around and say to them, but you've got to focus at school, you've got to, but put yourself in that same scenario when you were the same age. And at that age, very, very difficult to agree or to understand what other people are telling you, because at that age all your focus on is football and what you enjoy doing. But I think you've got to slowly example the benefits of having an understanding of your education and understanding that the journey might be short and at some point it's going to come to an end, whether it be 12, whether it be 14, whether it be 20, the journey will come to an end. So at some point the education and the academics has got to have a point at somewhere where you're going to have to take back over that and develop from there.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, Martin. It's been a pleasure. There's a lot to digest in this. I'm sure there are plenty of parents and plenty of players and coaches who will take on your advice. You smile, you smile, but I think it's been very insightful. So I appreciate your time. I know we've gone way over the time, but thank you very much.
Yeah, when we talk about football and when we talk about youth development, I could talk forever. I actually feel worn out talking.
No, it's been a pleasure having you on, and to you guys listening, hope you join me on the next episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you press the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.
This episode is sponsored by the PV Consultant, the go-to business strategist for salon owners and solo beauty professionals who want to grow smarter, not harder. If you're ready to boost your visibility and start attracting more clients today, download the PV Consultant's free Google cheat sheet at www.thepvconsultant.net/cheat sheet. It's packed with simple, powerful tips to get your business seen by the right people. A big thank you to the PV Consultant for supporting today's episode and helping more businesses shine.